in the Family Preservation Legal Clinic. And also present are Kristen Foster and Jen Patterson from the Family Advocacy and Support Team, the FAST program in Maricopa County. And we're here today to talk about our two programs and how we can help your clients in Pima County and Maricopa County, and what we do and sort of the differences and similarities between our two programs. Did the slide change? Okay. All right. So I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with dependency cases, so I just wanted to provide some background information. Normally, we're used to talking to DCS investigators and court personnel about our program, and less so your program. So I just want to make sure they understand what we're talking about. So a dependency case is a civil case in which the Arizona Department of Child Safety, that's DCS, or another party is asking the court to give them legal or physical custody of children because they don't believe the legal parents or guardians are currently capable of safely caring for the children. So in a nutshell, that's what a dependency case is. And in our experience, DCS often removes the children before they file their dependency petition with the court. Removal of the children and ongoing court involvement is traumatic for children, it's traumatic for the families, and often for the extended families that are trying to support the parents, maybe look after the children, things like that. So the goal of a dependency prevention program, which is both what FPLC and FAST are, is to work with parents and families to avoid unnecessary child removals and court filings by the Department of Child Safety. So we all want to reduce the number of dependency petitions being filed and keep families together and out of the court system. And if anyone has questions as I go along, feel free to interrupt me. I don't mind. So the Family Preservation Legal Clinic is a legal and social work clinic that's offered by the Pima County Public Defender's Office. And we provide limited legal and social work prior to the filing of a dependency petition if that assistance will help avoid the filing of a petition or the removal of the children. So we're seeking to reduce the number of dependency filings by addressing mostly potential safety issues that can be resolved quickly and efficiently without the need for court oversight. So how it works is that if a family is currently being investigated by DCS or is at risk of DCS involvement, DCS investigators and other community partners can provide the parent or intake line number or a flyer. The parent calls our intake line and provides their name, contact information, and some basic biographical information about the involved people so we can do a conflict check. And if there's no conflict, we try to begin helping the caller within 24 to 48 hours of their call. And we generally have to limit our assistance to cases whose issues can be addressed quickly through legal or social work assistance, and to parents who have not had a dependency petition filed against them yet. So it's okay if the parents are being investigated or if the parents are participating in a voluntary DCS case, but once that petition is filed, we have to stop helping them. So that's why it's for us, it's pre-petition work. And some of the example of assistance we give includes guidance in filing for contested divorce or paternity custody orders, or amending those, amending current custody orders. A lot of our cases involve domestic violence of that the children have seen. Sometimes it's one parent against another parent. Sometimes it's one parent's significant other towards that parent or the children. So we try to make sure that the kids can be with a safe parent and keep the domestic violence away from the children. So that's a lot of our cases. Assistance in obtaining an order of protection. We've also helped with minor powers of attorney. So sometimes a parents might be going into treatment or know that they're going to be incarcerated, and they want to make sure that while they're gone, someone that they approve of can take care of their kids. I've also helped fathers who about to be born or newborn children have called up and asked, "Hey, how can I establish paternity?" And so I pointed them to the putative father registry. That's a form that they can fill out to say, "Hey, I think I'm the dad of this child that was just born, but I'm not on the birth certificate, or I think that this child that's going to be born might be my kid." This helps them if cases get filed in the future because the state's on notice that this guy thinks he might be the dad. And we've also assisted with warrant resolution, and our social worker also can help out with housing resource referrals and employment resources. So that's some of the things that we do and have done in the past. So our goal is to assist the parent in resolving whatever safety concerns are there as soon as possible. We do this by assisting them in filing the family law pleadings, getting emergency temporary orders in place, filing for orders of protection, things like that. But we don't represent them in those family law proceedings. We just help them get ready to file. So we help them with completing their paperwork. We help them filling out the paperwork. We make them copies, and we guide them towards other resources they might need. Unfortunately, once they're in the family law process, they kind of have to move forward on their own at that point. So, but usually, in a lot of our cases, the parent getting emergency orders is sufficient for DCS to say, okay, family law court's now involved, and we think these kids are safe at this point in time. So, and then just trying to adapt some of these slides on the fly this morning, so not sure how well I did with some of these. Okay. So about 80% of our referrals from 2021 to 2025 came from directly from DCS investigators. And the pictures from 2024, I didn't have all the most recent information, but that's okay. And about 20% of our referrals came from other sources. So I think I'm less familiar with your program specifically than Kristen is, but let us know, especially for those of you in Pima County, exactly how we can help you and your participants. So if you think any of the people in your program, if we can assist them, please provide them our information. And even in cases where you're not sure if a parent qualifies or it might be outside of our listed services, don't hesitate to provide our information to them. We really want to help people. So, and I'm not sure if you're really interested in all of our results, but I'll show you a couple things anyway. Let's see. And this is about a year out of date. We do have the new information that includes 2025, but we're able to accept about half of the calls that we get. Some of the calls are just ineligible because for various reasons, and some of them have conflicts. So with the conflicts, that's because we've maybe represented the other parent in the past or something like that. We have a legal conflict, and we refer them out to other counsel to assist them in our stead. Some of them are asking for things that we can't do. There might be not really any risk of department involvement. They might just be looking for free family law help. Some of them are grandparents trying to get and other relatives trying to get guardianship, and that's not something that we do. But of the people that we helped, we have about a 91 success rate. So we managed to keep the 202 cases that we got between 2021 and 2024. We kept the majority of them from having dependency petitions filed. So we're really proud of that, because we can show that in our county, at least, our help has helped reduce the number of dependency filings. And even when they did get filed, some of them got dismissed without an adjudication of dependency and with fast reunification. So I think we all feel in our unit that we're really helping to keep people out of the court system, and that's our primary goal. So anything that we can do to help that, anything we can do to help your participants in your program, please let us know. And if there's things that we might not be doing that maybe our program can cover under our what we're allowed to do, we're happy to look into it. So we do have a flyer. It looks like this. We're happy to send you paper copies for your offices, or an electronic copy if you prefer electronic copy, but we're happy to get these out there. And we all have email addresses. This is our intake line, which is staffed Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. Clients can leave voicemails after hours and on weekends. And then one of our paralegals will call, chat with the caller, and then we'll get back with them as soon as possible about whether we can help them. And if we can help them, we'll set up an appointment and chat with them as soon as we can. That's like a very condensed version of our program. I can expand on it, but I'll wait and take some questions later. I don't want to ramble for too long or give you more details than you really want. If you want more background information on how we got started, please feel free to ask. I didn't really want to overwhelm everybody. I'm going to turn it over to Kristen, and then we can all she'll talk about her program, and then we can all take questions as a group at the end, unless anyone has any quick questions right now before I turn it over to Kristen.
Thank you, Jean. So Jean and I have done a lot of presentations to a lot of legal and DCS related people, and it gets confusing for everybody how our programs are different. I have a slideshow, but I'm going to just go ahead and speak to give an idea, and I can do the slides if anyone is interested. I work with Jen, who is on. Jen's a social worker. I'm an attorney. We work under the Maricopa County Office of Public Defense Services, and I'm actually called a dependency prevention attorney. That's my role, and I don't work within one of the bigger staffed offices. I'm by myself, which works out really well because, as Jean said, they have to sometimes decline cases because of conflicts. And luckily, I might have to decline a case because I personally represented the other parent, but the likelihood of that occurring is much, much smaller than if I were in a big office that our office represented the other parent. That's been a pleasant surprise. FAST was started before I was around, and it's based on a program from Washington State. And the program in Washington State is with the FIRST clinic. There's so many acronyms. I apologize. But they noticed the issue in their county specifically of women with opioid use disorder who are pregnant and losing custody of their children at birth. And they decided they wanted to start helping those women sooner than the typical model. So the typical legal model would be that you wait until the baby's born, the hospital calls in, the hotline report, DCS or whichever version of it is in their state would come out, investigate, remove the baby. And what they found was that by getting involved sooner, they were able to make a real difference. And so we've loosely recreated the program in Maricopa County, but we have a little more flexibility in some areas and a little less in others. Because I am working for the Office of Public Defense Services, it's a government program and not a nonprofit, which is what a lot of the prevention programs are. And so what's interesting is that Jean's program in Pima County and our program in Maricopa County are both through the public defender's offices, which is pretty impressive for Arizona, because most of the time public defense doesn't get involved until the court is involved. And these are programs that are intended to avoid court involvement. We are a little more specifically involved with treatment providers, especially for pregnant women with opioid use disorder. We will accept other parents at risk of having their children removed by DCS, but we've really focused on this particular population because there's such a need. And so we are connected to community partners that are also providing services for these women. And so I see Lori's on, and we have been out there a couple times recently, actually. She is with Pinchot Gardens through Taros, and they have a residential program that's really great. And some of the pregnant clients, patients there are people that Jen and I are able to help. And so we can go straight out to see them where they are. We get a lot of referrals from other resource providers. A big place would be Hushabye, and I imagine that everyone on this meeting is pretty familiar with Hushabye based on what the meeting is. But if anybody doesn't know, I can give a brief explanation. And then Jacob's Hope, but anywhere where pregnant women may be receiving treatment, prenatal treatment or substance use disorder treatment, they can direct those women to us for assistance. Just recently, I'm really excited. I'm connected through to the Arizona Department of Corrections to pregnant moms in Perryville. And I'm able to work much more closely now with women who are incarcerated in Estrella jail in Maricopa County. And what we do is anybody can call me. It's a really informal referral process. We don't get our referrals as much as Jean's program from DCS. We get our referrals from the treatment providers. Actually, one of our biggest sources of referrals lately has been former clients, and they tell the other moms because they're in treatment with them, or they become friends and they will let people know about us. And then if there is a case that is an open dependency case, but the mom is pregnant, we can get a referral to assist that mom with regards to her pregnancy, because the appointed attorney does not represent her as to the unborn child. So there are quite a few attorneys now who are starting to refer cases to us because they realize the value of it. And Jen and I will, I try to call moms back who reach out within 24 hours, or if I get a name and number, I reach out as quickly as I can and let them know what our goal is and who we work for. One of the advantages of our program is because they're getting legal representation through me. We have an attorney-client relationship. That means the information they share with me is privileged. So I am not going to be reporting what they tell me to DCS. And if I did report what they told me to DCS, I would no longer be able to be an attorney. So they can feel hopefully comfortable talking to us and telling us what's going on. I'll do a telephone call and do a quick conflict check just to be sure there's not a problem. And depending on the circumstances, I have an intake that I created that is similar to the questions that DCS would come out and ask if they're doing an investigation. So I will go over that. And what I'm trying to do with Jen is to identify any potential safety threats. And what we want to do is address and resolve those safety threats before the mother delivers, or as soon thereafter as we can. So sometimes we get moms who call us and they're in the hospital and the baby's 4 days old, and we'll still do whatever we can to help. At the beginning of a DCS case, especially in the investigation phase, the parents are very confused, scared, and they don't know what's happening, and there's no one they can trust to find out what's happening. And so we hopefully are somebody they can trust. And a lot of our clients just need some help getting through the process. And when they're being interviewed by DCS, if they've got me or Jen with them in person or on the phone, they feel a lot less outnumbered, and they feel less like they're being, I don't want to say persecuted, but that's what it feels like for them. They feel like someone is really after them. And we are there to provide support, but also guidance, and that can be practical guidance for how a DCS case works and legal guidance depending on their circumstance. So we do some of the same things that the Family Preservation Legal Clinic does, as far as if there's a legal solution that involves getting an order of protection or filing a family court case, we can help direct the parents on how to do that. Like the family preservation, we can't be their attorney of record. I mean, I certainly can't be their family court attorney, but I can show them where they need to go and how they need to get the process started. We represent the actual parents, and so we too get grandparents or aunts or uncles who want to get guardianship, and that's not what we do. We're really working for the parents because we want to avoid the family being broken up. However, if a parent wants to do a guardianship to another family member, and we're getting that guidance and the cases we're representing the parent, then we can help get a power of attorney or a guardianship in place for that parent, not for the prospective guardian. And we often find ourselves, one of the things that we do a lot of interface with DCS. And so we don't just take care of some of the legal aspects, because we're taking care of, do they have a place to live? Have they established sobriety? How long have they been sober? What kind of treatment are they getting? Making sure that they're in the right kind of treatment, and that they understand that it's not just a quick fix. We don't want to put a Band-Aid on and have the case get filed 3 weeks after it's closed. And so we also go to what are called team decision meetings. And those are meetings that DCS holds. They have them throughout their cases. But the one that we go to is the removal meeting. And that's when they have a meeting to determine whether or not they're going to remove a child and whether they're going to file with the court. And we like to, whenever we can, if there's going to be a removal meeting, we want to be there and help make sure that the moms know what is going on. One moment, please. Sorry. Sorry about that. And so what we find is that when we go to those team decision meetings, it can be a really hostile environment. And it depends on who the facilitator is, but the facilitator is always a DCS employee. And the parent can feel very, very outnumbered and not feel comfortable sharing what they need to share. So one of the things that we really feel is important is empowering the parent to be able to explain what's going on. Some parents in that circumstance they're going to fight, and that's not okay, but they feel ganged up on, and that's their instinct. And if they've got people with them explaining what's happening and letting them know that they're not being treated differently than other parents in this situation, they can stay a little calmer and maybe better express what they need to express. Or some parents just really get so overwhelmed they don't say anything because they're scared to say anything. And we want to make sure that they can explain their situation. Sometimes That might mean that we remind them what services they're participating in because they get to the meeting and they draw a blank. And sometimes the investigation gets off on the wrong foot and is includes a lot of misinformation. And one of that happens a lot. And so I find that one of the ways that we are particularly impactful is getting that misinformation cleared up as quickly as possible. Because if the parent is trying to clear it up and no one's listening to them, and then they get frustrated, and then they start getting angry with people because people are saying things that aren't true, instead of hearing what the parent is saying, a lot of times the parent is immediately called uncooperative, argumentative, and then they put that in the court report and they take it to court, and exactly, it's in the petition. So then by the time they get to court, there's now this legal document saying information that's usually pretty negative about the parents that isn't true, and then they tell their lawyer that's not true, and the lawyer says, okay, we'll deal with that later, but we can't deal with that today because we've got so many other things to deal with at this first hearing. And I can't imagine what would be more discouraging to someone who has been, they could have been in this investigation for a few weeks trying to say that's not correct, and no one will listen to them. Then they finally get their attorney, and their attorney says, okay, that's important, but not today. And then they don't get to tell the judge. And when they try to tell the judge says, no, 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 that's not how this works. You're going out of order. And they feel like no one's going to listen to them. And so I love it when we can get it cleared up at the meeting or before the meeting with the investigator. And DCS does not want to talk to me because I'm a lawyer. So a lot of times Jen is the one that's going to be doing more of the talking to the case managers, and I will be aware of what's going on, but maybe trying to quietly guide things in the background because I'm not trying to bamboozle DCS with some kind of legal magic. The law is very much in favor of DCS. And I'm not going to go in and scare them with any legal weapons because there pretty much are none. However, I can make sure that what they're doing is in keeping with their policies, and I can make sure that what they're doing is legal and that it's factually correct. And it's amazing how many times one or all three of those things are not true. And so it's been interesting. The Maricopa County is so huge. Pima County is too, but I worked down there initially in this area of law after law school because I went to law school there, and then I was really surprised when I got up to Maricopa County. I feel like it's more adversarial up here, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of cooperation that can occur in Pima County and be really beneficial to the families. But what I find is that depending on the DCS office we're working with, we might have people there who know, we're starting to be known, but it's just us, but they're starting to know us, and some really like us and they get what we're doing, and they get that we're trying to actually make their lives easier by cutting down on the number of cases that they file and helping them see if they don't need to take a case. Other places, they're pretty hostile because they just assume that I'm opposed to every single case being filed and that I have a vendetta against DCS. I do not. They are overworked and they are not ready to handle all of the things that I think our society expects them to handle. They're supposed to be there for imminent safety threats when a child is really in danger. And I want them there for that. And I want them to be available to take care of that and not spending time on someone who has been sober, who is maintaining their sobriety, who has gotten to a stable place and is not a threat. And so it's a message that's getting heard, but not always heard. But the other advantage that I have is since this is a legal program, if DCS is really on the wrong foot or doing something really wonky, then I can call one of their attorneys because I have a connection now with the Attorney General's office in Maricopa County specifically to deal with situations where DCS is just off base. And again, they're not off base because they're malicious. They get confused. They have the wrong information. So many of the case managers are really young and trying to catch up. And they're not going to believe me when I tell them that they're legally incorrect and that legally they can't do something. And I understand that because I'm not there to give them legal advice. But I can call their attorney and say, hey, there's this investigation. This is what your worker is saying. Do you think maybe you could reach out so that we can nip this in the bud so that this doesn't keep going for another couple weeks and end up in court and end up turning into a giant mess that maybe doesn't get resolved for a year when it could be resolved right now? So I don't know if any of that makes sense. I think I'll give a really quick, I'll try to make it quick. I'm a talker. I know that. But one of our very first cases I thought was a disaster. Here I was starting this program and wanting to show everybody how this is going to be awesome. And the first client I actually got was from Pinchot Gardens. And she had an open case and she was pregnant. And early in her pregnancy, she had gone to Estrella, the women's jail up here in Maricopa County, and was on methadone. She was sober, and she was sober for almost all of the pregnancy. She was very early in her pregnancy when she was incarcerated. And then she got released and went straight into the program at Pinchot Gardens and was maintaining her sobriety, was maintaining her stability. She said she didn't need to talk to me. She just didn't like her lawyer for her open case because they were going to terminate her parental rights as to her older children. But she didn't have a problem because she was sober. So there was no reason for DCS to get involved with the baby once the baby was born. And I said, well, I understand your thinking, but legally that's not true. And she said, well, I don't want to talk to you. And so I said, okay. She had the baby and she went back to Pinchot Gardens and was complying with everything. DCS found out, said that she was trying to abscond with the baby because she hadn't notified them about the baby's birth. And they decided that they were going to remove. And so she said, okay, I guess maybe I do need you. So Jen and I went out to meet with her and I pulled up her criminal history and she had 2 charges for kidnapping for her older children from less than a year beforehand because of the placement was a family placement. They wanted to adopt, and to speed up the process, they had said, hey, Mom, why don't you come watch your kids? We got to go somewhere. We know it's not allowed, but just help us out this one time. She went over, they called the police and said she's not allowed to be with those kids. So once you hear where the charges come from, you go, wait a second, she wasn't kidnapping, but no one wanted to listen to her because she had 4 kids who weren't in her custody. She didn't contact DCS when she was in jail because she didn't know how to. She didn't contact DCS when she got out because she didn't like them. And she didn't want them to take her baby, and she figured it was a lost cause with her older kids. And so we met with her extensively. I was like, oh, this is going to be a tricky one because she was already had these charges that they were saying she was trying to kidnap the baby, just like she kidnapped her other kids, even though that was totally misleading. And she was pretty feisty, but she really was sober and had maintained her sobriety and was doing a great job of doing what she needed to do to keep her stability. And so Jen and I went the next day. She had her TDM, her team decision meeting. And it was really lucky for me because I got to see, she had a visit with her 4 older kids right before the meeting. And I walked in when they were saying goodbye in the office and saw just how attached these kids were to their mom and how this was such a loving, real relationship. Mom hadn't been around for a while, but the kids were still attached to her, and termination of her parental rights was not going to be a good thing for the kids. there were some legal issues because of the kidnapping charge standing out there. And so her attorney, with regard to the termination of her rights, really had her hands tied, because if she let the mom talk at trial, anything she said at trial could be used to convict her of kidnapping, even if that's not what it was offered for. So at the TDM, Jen and I think we were both pleasantly surprised, because it was an office that was very receptive. They listened to us. The mom stayed really a lot calmer because we had talked, prepared. I explained to her the information DCS needed to know. There was a lot of information she wanted to share that DCS didn't need to know. And so she provided them with the important information. And when we left that meeting, I was shocked, because not only were they going to let mom keep her baby, their plan had been to get her there so they could take the baby, because they were worried if they didn't get her there, that she would leave with the baby. They decided she could keep the baby, remain where she was, because she was getting the services she needed. She was compliant. The baby was safe. And they decided to drop the termination of parental rights and make it back into a reunification case plan. And so that trial went away, and she transitioned from Pinchot Gardens to a different longer term program and reunified with her kids at that program. And the last I heard, things were going really, really well. That was almost 3 years ago now that happened. But it wasn't like legal magic. It was making sure DCS knew what was really happening. It was making sure the mom understood not everyone was going to ignore her, and letting her know the important parts of her story to share, because sometimes people get caught up on issues that are really important to them personally but have no impact legally. And they don't understand that. But if a lawyer explains that without minimizing the importance of it to them personally, then they can let that go for at least the course of the TDM. Sorry, that wasn't as short as I wanted it to be, but it was my favorite case because it was so shocking and so successful, and it looked really bad.
I'll chime in and say, Kristen, I think that's exactly what all of us are trying to do. We see kind of how the playing field isn't always leveled, and everyone wants the same outcome. We want mothers and parents to be involved in services, and we want, kiddos to be safe, but how we go about that in our own little silos is sometimes not always the most productive. So I'm sure
And that's
everyone,
why we like to
yeah.
help with this. And the legal world's a little weird. It's not always sensical. It can be really nonsensical. And it's nice to have a lawyer who can tell you what's going to happen, even if it's not what should happen. This group in particular, because I've been connected to this group and I've been able to attend past meetings, I am super grateful to. And I don't know if anyone on the meeting was involved in this, but it was interesting because even though I work in Maricopa County, we get people at some of the service providers from other counties. And I was really surprised because there was a mom from a different county who was at Hushabye, and she had an open case in the other county. And that case manager came down to Maricopa County to, to assert control of it. And she wanted a safety plan in place at Hushabye that the mother not be allowed to touch or see her child for 10 days. And I was like, that's a removal of a child. That's not a safety plan. That's illegal. And that's not going to fly. And they didn't even do a TDM. And it was based on the erroneous belief that if mom was still using and she had any residue anywhere on her and that residue touched the baby would die. And so these investigators kept telling everyone the mom was going to kill the baby if she touched the baby. Hushabye knew that wasn't true, but Hushabye was at a loss. And it was great that they contacted me because that's where I was so excited. So I flipped my lid and reached out to the ombudsman and was reaching out to the AG's office. And there's a county that's smaller in Arizona where I'm probably not that welcome, but that was the way they handled every single case when a baby was born to a mom with opioid use disorder. Instead of taking custody and filing to get judicial review, they were trying to get around it by instituting an illegal safety plan that prevented all contact between the mom and the child. And I think we got that resolved. And it was because I was able to reach out to some of the people who were in this group to back me up with the medical evidence that what these women were saying was completely erroneous, that I was able to get pretty quick results. Also, the attorney, I sent her some stuff and she was like, oh, okay. Because these case managers, the investigators were adamant that they were correct and this baby was going to OD and die, and that I was a crazy lady who didn't know what she was talking about and should mind her own business. The county started